Hi, I'm Michelle and I do samples and make patterns for Lemon Lane. You might have seen some of my bags and pouches and purses on the shows on Create and Craft, and I'm going to show you now how to make them. In this video I'm going to show you how to make the Gemma clutch bag. It's a lovely little bag. It's just the right size to hold all your little belongings that you want to take out with you. It's got a zipper pocket and a couple of slip pockets as well, and a little wristlet. It's very easy to carry about. So in the patterns, you get them already printed for you, ready to cut out. So you just cut out all the pattern pieces that you need. You get a choice of 2 zippers, and it's just to decide which one you want to do. I'm doing a number 5 zipper in this tutorial. Then you want to print off your Gemma Bag pattern instructions. They give you step-by-step instructions plus photographs on how to put it all together. And then for a little bit of extra help, you can have this video as well. I've used the Heartfelt fabric, which is gorgeous. I absolutely love this, with the blush pink for the flap on the bag and the lining, in case you want to make yours out the same fabrics I've used. So I think we'll start off with the back first. It's already been attached to the foam, and I've already attached to the front as well, because I'm going to show you how to attach the foam to the fabric when I come to do the flap on the bag. And then I've put my name plate in the place that I want, and later on we'll be adding a magnetic clasp to this. And I've also just pinned in place to remind myself that this is where my little D-ring's going to go. So let's do that bit first and get it back on the bag so we don't lose it. So just like I do with the straps, you're going to cut out your piece of fabric, you're going to fold into the middle and then fold over again, and that will give you your 1-inch little strap connector. Going to then pop it under the machine. Make sure these are all lined together, actually, these edges. And I'm not going to go right to the very edge because I want to make sure I catch both sides, but I'm going to go near enough and just do a bit of a back stitch. Get those edges together and sew down one side. Just across the top. It's easier than clipping it. Then down the other side. And that is our little strap connector. Very easy. Then going to actually secure the D-ring onto here. So just slide it through, and then just going to sew through all the layers at the end, just to make sure that we don't lose it. And that's sorted. Now what I'll do while I've got this firmly in my mind, I'm going to actually attach it to my front of my bag. Now it looks a bit odd because I'm going to sew it this way, but when you've sewn it, it will pop out. Also, leave yourself a good extra bit hanging over, and don't chop that off, because that gives you strength to your connector, because over time when you're swinging your bag about, it's going to come loose. So you need to give it all the support it can get. So you don't want it right in the seam allowance, you want it to hang over. So we're just going to sew this onto here now, and we don't need to worry about it anymore. All done. Get rid of my threads, pop that to one side, so we can pop them both to one side. Let's get on with the wristlet strap, because we've just done the strap connector. So for that, we're going to need a swivel clasp and the actual strap itself. So we're going to make sure, we don't want no raw edges, that's what I'm trying to say to you. So I'm going to put my swivel clasp onto my strap, then I'm going to open my strap out at both ends because I want to create a circle. Because when I do that, that means I'm not going to have any raw edges showing. I'm going to encase these now. I'm just going to sew across. And down. And then I'm going to cut some of this fabric away because I don't want all this in my seam. Because we're always trying to eliminate bulk out of anything we're making in our bags. So then you would, at home, take this to the iron and open out your seam. Fully open it. But we're going to finger press it instead. So I'm going to fold that back over. And then I'm going to fold over the other side. And then line them all up. Seam to seam. And we have our strap ready to sew, and the actual D-ring is encased, just like it is on the original bag that I showed you. So now we can sew the strap. I'm just going to lift this up, and I want to do a longer stitch because I'm wanting it to be a bit of a decorative stitch, like a top stitch. Well, it is a top stitch. So along we go, making sure we're lining the edges together. Do you know there's many ways in which to make a strap, but I'm showing you the easiest way. This is definitely the easiest way, where you fold in half and then into the centres and then over. It's such a lovely easy way to do it, but there's many ways in which you can make a strap. So just keep stitching around. So hopefully we'll have enclosed this up very shortly. I've got to do the other side then because I want it to look fancy. It's not important because the other side's all enclosed, but I think it looks better with stitching down both sides. Just take it careful when you go over them seams because it is a bit bulkier there, even though we cut some of the bulk out. So that's that side, so just do the other side and then we've sewn it all. Take away any threads. Nearly there. Just go carefully over these seams, which is fine. just in the nick of time. I need to change my bobbin, but I've already got one wound. So I'm just going to, that's it. So push the seam where you joined it to the back. And this is where, just like mine, you could add some rivets. And same with the strap connector. That's where you could add some rivets there to your strap if you wished. Or you could just sew it over, whatever you want to do. So we'll put that to one side now and we'll carry on with the bag. I've got my lining pieces and I'm going to make myself a lovely slip pocket. We're going to have 2 pockets actually. You could leave it as one if you wanted though. If you wanted just one big pocket, just sew around the edge. But if you want 2 or even 3, put your lines accordingly. First of all though, I want to top stitch my pocket just for a really nice finished look. I just think it looks lovely. I love the shape of this bag. I really do. I think it's a nice bag when you don't want to carry too much, but you want something nice. You don't want a big bag, but you want something bigger than a purse. I'm just going to line them up just so I can sew around. It's best just to clip your edges and then stuff's not moving about. And we're just going to baste going all the way around just to keep it in place. It's a nice easy slip pocket is this because it sits within all your seam allowances. You're not having to place it anywhere. It's just the same shape as the bag. Nice and easy. Definitely beginner friendly, I would say, with all the tutorials and written tutorials and this video tutorial with all these instructions. I think you can definitely follow it. I don't think you'll have a problem. Right, now we want to get the centre, so we're going to, because I'm having 2 pockets on mine. You might have a phone that's a certain size and you want to make sure that your pocket fits that. Snip that. Or you might have a purse or you want to make a pen pocket. Just make sure you don't do it taut. Make sure you leave it, if your phone's, I don't know, this big, don't sew it right up to the edge because you won't get it in. And you've got seam allowance this side to take off and here, so just be aware when you're sewing it that you need to leave a bit of an extra space. So now with my pen that I can iron off, if I wanted to, I'm just going to draw a line down the centre. So you can see that line, but once I've ironed it, it'll have gone. So I just want to make sure that when I'm stitching straight. And I'm going to do 2 rows of stitches because I think it looks professional. You can do whatever you want. You can just do 1 row, or you don't even need to do, like I said earlier, you don't even need to split the pocket if you don't want. So actually 1 pocket is a teensy-weensy bit bigger than the other, but not enough for you to notice, because my second line's gone straight down the centre. And when that's ironed off, that'll look perfect. 2 lovely pockets. Definitely fit a phone in there, I'd say. Now we've done this pocket, let's do our zipper pocket. So for this, you can do your zipper pocket before you actually put your lining in, or you can do it once it's all put together. It is easier doing it this way. So let's do it the easy way. So let's draw a line all the way across. So we've got it straight to the edge. Then I want to get my centres and clip. Just a tiny notch. Just make sure that when you're doing these notches, they're within your seam allowance. There we go. So now I've got my facing for the number 5 zip. You could quite easily put a number 3 in. It's whatever's your choice, isn't it? And this is the time when I do want to use a pin, because I think it'll keep it in place better. And I've got my line at the top to keep my facing straight. So as long as I do that, I should be good to go. And I'm going to make my stitches back to a regular stitch length, which is 2.5 on this machine. Along we go, making sure that it's staying up to that line. Take my pin out now. And just gonna, all we're doing is sewing all the way around this rectangle. On your actual pattern piece, there's 2 V's, one at each end, which I'll sew on in a second just to show you. Once you get used to making these, you won't bother drawing them on, I don't think, because you'll know where to stop. But if you've never made one of these before, then it's a good idea to draw them on. Also, I would recommend, if you've never made zipper pockets before, get some old zips, get some old fabric, and just get practicing putting them in. Because the more you practice, the more it'll become second nature, and you'll find you'll want to put these in most of your bags. So we're going to just draw these V's in, and at the end here, just there and there, we're going to stop cutting. This is where we're going to cut. So fold it in half, just do a little cut down the centre, just enough to get it started. And then I'm going to cut to that dot and then cut along the V's, but not cut into the stitching. If you cut into the stitching, you'll have to re-stitch because it'll all start to come apart. But it's easy enough to get back in and sew it up, and you've not ruined it. It's easy enough to rectify. So I'm just going to cut them. And if I don't cut them enough, I'll know, because when I turn it through, it'll be all puckered. And I'll have to go back in and do another stitch. So, pull that through. This is where you would get your iron out at home, and definitely iron this because it would be so crisp and easy to work with. Now let me just get some of these seams sorted out. So I'm just running my thumbs along my seams. So it's kind of like ironing, but just not as good. And then do the other side. Just need it to stay in place for me. Here we are. Give those corners a bit of a helping hand. Just give them a bit of a pull. Turn it over. I think we're going to have to go in and cut a stitch. It's good really that it's happened because I can show you what to do. So we've got these sides, but look at that. Really puckered. So you want to shove them back through. You need to get your scissors and you need to take it much further than what I did, but still not cutting into them stitches. Right, this side now should look way better, and then we can sort the other side out. That's so much better. Look at that. So that's fine as that, so it's just this side. There we are. This hopefully will be the same. Not enough, a little bit more. Better be safe than sorry though. Just a weeny bit. Right, I should do it this time. So now, but it's worth messing and getting it right, because if you'd left those puckers in, then it's noticeable. But now, even without an iron, that's sitting lovely. So that's how you get puckers out of corners, and especially once you get your iron on it. It gets them out. But they are cut as much as I dare. If I cut any more, I'm going to end up with a big hole. So now we're going to put the zip on. So take the zip. I want right sides facing me. So I've got my right side of my fabric facing me and the right side of my zip facing me. If you do it any other way, it's going to all be back to front and upside down. So just pop some clips in. Longer stitch length. And then a bit of a back stitch. And along we go. The hardest thing really, I think, on this bag is probably the flap and getting your perfect curves. So it's not hard. It's just not straight lines. So now I'm going to do the same with this. It's not a very deep pocket, it's just a pocket to hold a bit of change or your keys, you don't want to lose them. Because you've got two other pockets within the bag that you can also use. You've got those two big slip pockets. And then I want to close mine from the left. So I'm going to put my raw edges to the top, my zippers to the left, and I'm going to push this seam down. And then when I cut across, my pieces will be the right length. And also, because I haven't got my iron, but you will be ironing that, you'd iron that flat, I'm going to sew this bit just to keep it flat to help me put my pocket in. That'll help me a lot, you see. And if there's any information I've missed out, you don't need to worry, because it's all in the instructions that you download with the pattern. So between the instructions and the video, everything will be covered. That's lovely and flat now. It's a lot easier to place into my pocket. Want the bigger piece to the top, the smaller piece to the bottom of the lining. I'm going to lay this on top, and I want to line up the edges of my facing. So once I've lined up the edging of my facing, I know that it's all going to sit correctly. Now at this point you could glue it down, you could put double-sided tape, however you feel comfortable. I'm going to just lay it on, because now I've got my edges in the right place. I like to push my finger between the zip and the opening of the pocket, and that usually gives me the right spacing on a number 5 zip. Just kind of lines it up for me. There we are. We'll cut off all our extra threads. And then we need to stitch the pocket together. So I'm going to push this down. I want to turn my bag through the pocket. So I'm going to fold it up. And over. Ready for me to stitch the sides. So I'm going to stitch this side first. And then I'm going to do exactly the same to the other side. Keep this out of the way, don't be sewing onto my actual lining itself. Here we are. So now get my scissors, just trim it all down a little bit. Get rid of my excess zipper, etc. And turn my lining out on my zip. So that's ready now for when we want to turn our bag through. Leave your zipper open and we'll move on to the next bit. So I think we should do the flap next. So I've not shown you how to put the magnetic clasping on the flap, because I am going to show you how to put it on the bag, and it's the same procedure. One thing you do need to make sure is that everything is lined up really perfectly, and I was going to show you how to sew the foam onto the flap, but it looks like I've already done it, so apologies for that. but you just sew all the way around. I've also got all my woven interfacing on all my pieces, and that's what gives your bag that lovely structure. Just clip where the little corners are. Just want it all to sit nicely as we sew. Couple more clips. Don't want to sew the top at this moment in time because I need to turn it through. So I'm onto a regular stitch length, and I'm going to sew all the way around to make sure you get a really good curve on this. If you're doing your 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, find somewhere on your bag that you can follow going all the way around so that you know that you're totally even around those curves. But it's really important because this is the thing that people are going to see mostly on your bag. So just going round, take your time, nice and carefully. I'm looking at the edge of my foot here and I'm watching it go around. There we are. Along we go. Time. Going to trim it next because I want to make sure that we get all the bulk out of the way. There we are. And I'll take my scissors. Got roughly gonna half the seam allowance. And then we can turn it to the right side. When I put my magnetic clasp on, I put it on the lining side of the flap, just in case it looks confusing because they're all the same colour. But that was the lining side. And you need to put it on before you sew the actual flap together. But at this point, you could still reach in and put one on if you needed to. So all is not lost if you forget. Just going to roll these seams. This is where ironing it would be superb. Get those little corners well and truly pushed out. Just by pushing the seams together, it really helps. Now if you like a deeper top stitch, just make sure you move your magnetic clasp higher up. I'm just doing around the very edge. It's whatever you like the look of best really, isn't it? So this will just help me keep everything in place when I go around. Longer stitch length. I'm going to go up to the edge, probably 1/8 of an inch, that's all we want. I'm following a mark actually on my foot in the middle, and that's how I'm gauging where my top stitch wants to be. And I'll follow that when I go around the curve as well. And this is where you could go really slow just to make sure you get it right. I mean, it pivots quite nicely with just one hand, to be fair. Now just take your time going around the last curve. There we are. So now we've just got to smooth this out. You would be ironing this. Smooth it out. We're going to pin the top. I don't want to pull it too tight, but I just want to make sure it's smoothed out, because if there's any excess fabric, I want to push it to the top so I can chop it off when I finish sewing across. You don't want loads of wrinkles. So turn it back to the right side. So a little bit of excess there. Straighten it up. And we are ready to add the front and back together. So now we're going to attach the outsides together, make it into, you know, the finished bag before we start on the lining. We've already got our strap connector in place, our nameplate on. We do need to add the other magnetic clasp, but before we do that, let's sew these pieces together and put the flap on. And then that determines where you're going to put your magnetic clasp on the base of the front of the bag. Just change the stitching back down to 2.5. Take it steady over this strap connector because you've got a lot of layers. Just go steady. It'll make it. There we are. We did it. Follow your foot around these curves. Now you can put your actual strap connector on whichever side you want, depending on whether you're right-handed or left-handed. Whatever you feel best for you. Now before we do anything else, I want to really secure my strap connector. So I'm going to give it another set of stitches within the seam allowance. So it's had a basting stitch now, and it's had its main stitch to stitch it onto the bag, and then you've got one in between. And I've gone over a few times so that's not coming undone. I'm going to leave this extra long piece in. I'm not cutting that off at all, and that'll just secure my bag. I'm going to cut my seam allowances down into half just to get rid of my bulk, but cut around my actual strap connector. Don't go too near your stitching. And let's just get rid of some bulk. And then when you get your lining in and we've cut the bulk off that, it'll all sit really nice. It makes it really tidy, doesn't it? So now let's turn the outside of the bag through. Oh. Sorry. Right, shall I go? Let's turn the outside of the bag through. So now I'm going to turn the rest of the bag through. Make sure you're pushing out those lovely curved corners. Run your fingers all around the seams to give it its shape. It's a lovely shape. Pull that strap connector out now. At this point, you give it a good press. It'll all look amazing. So then we need to add the flap. So to do that, it wants to go on the back of the bag with your magnetic clasp facing you. And you want to make sure it's even. So you can either do little snips in the middle to join it together, or you can kind of eyeball it and then just have a measure to see if you actually did it right. That will look okay. And we want to base this into place. So that's our next job. I can do a bigger stitch length for that. Right. So pop your bag back under the machine. Just going to baste the flap onto the bag in place. That's it. So it's out of the seam allowance, but it just keeps everything where it should be. Because we want to do the magnetic clasp next. We don't want to forget, and then we've sealed the bag up. So now, this one's folding over, but not tight. If you do it tight like that, once you shut it, that's about as much as you're going to get in your bag. So you need to leave enough space to actually be able to get things in your bag. So if you see this one that I made earlier, you can see that there's quite a space there from the top to the clasp, and that's what we're aiming for, so that when we put stuff in, it can actually open out and it'll fit perfect. So I've got a bit of foam here, my magnetic clasp. I'd already made some holes to save time earlier. Just got to see where they are. Here we are. So I actually gauged it from the other bag that I'd made. So when you fold it over, you can work out where the magnetic clasp wants to go. And that does depend on your different fabrics as well. So it's easy to place on the pattern the other one, but this one's more a matter of what you're using to make the bag with. So I put a piece of foam in there as well, just to make sure that it's not going to go through the fabric when it's, you know, when it's settled. Use end of this, just want to get those prongs down. When it's in the bag, we don't want it poking through the fabric. So now I've got that in there with the foam protecting it. And hopefully when I shut this flap on this bag, it should all sit like I said. That's it. Nice piece at the top, enough room at the top like that. Enough room to be able to get all your stuff in. So that's the front of the bag done, and we've also already done the strap connector. So apart from the bit of lining and maybe putting some rivets in, we're not far off done. So I've got my pocket with my slip pockets. I've got my zipper pocket, and we're going to sew these together. Let's make sure my zipper's open and I'm ready to turn the bag. Let's chop all these bits off and fasten these together. So especially on the curves, because I think that really helps when you're sewing it, because things can just move a bit. Got our centres there. Yeah, I think we're okay there. So I need to put my stitch length back down to 2.5. And I'm going to start off at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you can do that all the way around if you wish, but I'm then going to increase it. I'm going to increase mine to 3/4 inch, so I'm just going to turn it. I'm looking at on my machine where to actually sew it to increase my seam allowance, because I want my lining to fit really, really snug. And I'm just following this line, so when I start doing my curves, I'm still following this line, and that's how I'll get the correct curve. I mean, it's a lot easier doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance because it's much nearer the edge. We don't need to leave any gaps in the lining because we're going to be turning the bag through the pocket. So that's another nice feature of this bag, with having the pocket. I've got to make sure I don't get a pleat there. That's it. Turning it round. And don't forget, if you have increased your seam allowance, you've got to remember to decrease it when you get to the edge. Otherwise, when you come to sew them together, they won't fit. So just a little bit further, and we're going to start turning now, because I want to go back to the smaller allowance, and that should fit the top perfectly. So we're all finished there. Let's chop off all this excess fabric, because there's quite a lot. You've not only got the front and the back, you've also got 2 layers on your slip pockets. Got rid of all that. So now it's time to put it all together. Make sure if you have got the right seam allowance. So I want my zipper pocket to the back and my slip pockets to the front, but it is personal preference. If you want to do it the other way around, do however you would like your bag to be. So that's going to go in there. little bit of a tight squeeze because we've got a tighter lining, but it's not tighter at the top, and that's an important bit. So let's clip this first and get our seams matching up. So we've got them matching up there, and maybe put another one either side, just so it doesn't move. That's it. And we're going to do the other side. Push your bag in. Just a bit hard in the beginning, but it soon sorts itself out. Line them seams up. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Put a clip either side. So now, clip it in the middle and along, making sure you've got no puckers. Everything should fit because we had the correct seam allowances. And then just try and lay the thicker part where the flap is, lay it as straight as you can. Get some more clips in there. Just don't want anything moving. You don't want to sew it and then you find out you missed half your lining. There we are. So I'm going to, for this one, this bag, I'm going to move the bottom of the machine. Just makes it a bit easier. I might have to remove some of these clips and all if they start getting stuck. Let's start with that one. Missed. And there we go. Once I start it off, it'll be fine. There we are. And I'm going to be sewing all the way along. I'm at the right stitch length. Move my clips as I go. You can sew it the other way up if you had to, if you've got a machine where you can't get under. And then we need to make sure that these seams are lined up again, because that will be noticeable if they're way out. They look good to me. Move on to the next bit. Right, get rid of some of these clips. Right, make sure that the line is still pulling up to the edge, because it's trying to pull away a little bit because I've got clips everywhere and my lining's not as big as my bag. We'll take them few clips out now, I think I dare. Just keep going round. Not far off done, you know. Make sure these are lined up. Right, done it. So all we've got to do is turn the bag through. once we've taken a bit of seams off here. So I'm going to go right in to the seams there, take off all that bulk, because when you're wanting to sew that bit, it's going to be hard. Going to do the same here, but not go that near the stitches that it jeopardises them, and that will be much easier to sew when we come to it. So now I want to turn my bag through my pocket, which is quite small, but so's the bag, to be fair, so it'd be fine. There it goes. It's going. Ooh! So my bag's through now, and my lining's nearly through. I'm not going to bother pushing all that through because I don't have to push it back and then you end up fighting with it. So that's fine now. We just need to make sure we top stitch and close up our pocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop all that inside my bag. This should fit beautifully because we've taken a good extra bit of seam allowance off our lining. I want to pin, rolling back my seams to make sure that it doesn't show to the front, because that doesn't look good with having two different colours. Can you see where I cut it away at the seams here? It's now made that light flush, whereas it's been really bulky. So that's really helped that seam. The other seam is exactly the same because we chopped all that excess off. That's lying really nice now. And we just got to be careful when sewing this flap that you get your lining pulled in. So I'm just going to push my pocket right down and zip it up for now. I want to push my lining really into my bag so that it's pushed down, and then I'm going to start top stitching. So I want a longer stitch, and I just want to get it started. There we are. So now we're just ready to top stitch. So just keep feeling underneath the bag, making sure that that fabric that's part of your lining where the flap is, I want to make sure that that keeps nice and out of the way and it's not puckering or doing anything. Let's get these threads out of the way. Start removing a few clips. I want to keep rolling that lining underneath. And we don't have loads of bulk to contend with because we cut it away. Still enough though. Right, move that out of the way. That's it. Keep rolling your seams back. So we're nearly there, and it's not taken that long to make. So I reckon you could do this easily within a day, even as a beginner. You've obviously got your cutting time and your adding your woven interfacings and things like that on top, but maybe cut out one day and sew the next. Or if you really can't wait, just go for it. On the last bit, keep this lining out of the way. Let's get this cut, there we go. Cut off my threads. Nearly done. I nearly forgot to sew up the pockets. So I need to remember to do that. I'm just going to clip this together. One side then the other. Ooh! Another clip. There we go. And then just tidy that up again so it all fits. Ready to sew. So this is your zipper pocket. So I'm sewing mine by machine. You could sew it by hand if you wished. I don't think it matters when it's within the pocket. Not like, you know, totally visible. But it's however you feel your bag looks finished. So chop off all my excess threads. Now at home you'd be giving it a really good press. Going to push the lining right inside the bag. And this is where it does need a press, especially around the top. And then we're going to fasten magnetic clasp, add on our strap. What a beautiful bag that is. And then, like I said earlier, you could add some rivets, just those finishing touches if you wish to finish it off. And that's the Gemma little clutch bag.